All right, we're live. Hello, everybody. Thank y'all for joining the live stream tonight. Tonight, I have Ron Morehead on the show, and I have Chris Kramer as my co-host tonight, and we're going to be talking Bigfoot and cryptids. So I'm thanking all of you for showing up for the show. Ron, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing well, thank you. Yeah, appreciate being on. Thank you.
Yes, Ron, I wanted to ask you, like, with your research, like, I want to know, how did you get into starting out doing shows? Not shows. How did you get started with your research as far as Bigfoot was concerned?
Well, it began for me in 1971. I became involved with a group of hunters who had been visiting a remote camp in the isolated mountains of California. And since 1958, they've been going there, Johnson Brothers. And they came out with a story one summer after they'd gone up there just for a look around. And they said that there's some kind of monster up there. I didn't know what it was. Nobody had looking for Bigfoot at the time. Wasn't on anybody's radar. And these guys are avid hunters. They came out and told the other guys, which there was 5 of them altogether. I became the 6th one after that. But the other guys had to go up there and see what it was happening, because that's not supposed to happen. These Johnson Brothers first heard it, they thought something's out there. It's not a bear. It was really being rowdy and doing some things. So anyway, they went out later when it all commotion stopped and saw this big track in the mud out there. And by the way, the camp's about 8 miles in the wilderness and 8,400 feet elevation. So it's a kind of an imposing place to get to, too. I've had a few accidents. A lot of people had accidents on that trail. I've had a lot of people from our group. Horses, me, mule, horses, me. Anyway, one of the guys stayed up there that first night after they went back then, and he got freaked out. He didn't know where to put it in his paradigm. He's a very religious person. We was all church people at the time, and just didn't know where to put that, because monsters like that aren't supposed to exist. He was thinking Nephilim, giants, all that stuff from the Bible. And so he came out and he said, "What the Johnson brothers was saying up there is true. There's some kind of monster up there. I heard it. I heard them." And so the guys wanted him to go back and see if the guys were okay, because they weren't coming out when they were supposed to. And he wouldn't go back by himself. So I got invited. I was friends with them all, so I became kind of part of the hunting group then. We made it in, and he about killed me walking in, but he's like a mule anyway. I thought I was in shape. He was in shape. I'll tell you, you leave the valley floor at sea level, then you go up to 85, actually you go to 10,000 feet, then drop down a little. You're not quite as in shape as that light air up there as you thought you were.
Absolutely.
So that's how I got involved, and I started going back as often as I could, and we started all taking tape recorders. They'd already took tape recorders up the first time out. And so anyway, I became a horseman, a rifleman, and a hunter after that, so I could be part of the group. That's mainly what they were there for. But after that, we had these things come into camp in the evening time and just join us around a little bit. And so anyway, that's how it started. It wasn't until 7. Go ahead, just jump me. I'll talk all night long if you don't stop me.
I followed that story. Ron, I followed. I mean, I know this tale, like what your synopsis, for a long time. I think I first became aware of you. I mean, maybe it was Art Bell. I mean, it was a long time ago. And I've always, one thing that fascinated me, especially in the last 5 years. I'm just going to jump into something real quick, because I know Bettina's got a list of things she'd like to ask you, so I'm going to squeeze it in while I can. So I've been a member of a kind of a small group of guys, and we've experiencers out in and we live beneath the Mogollon Rim in Arizona, and we've been out for a long time, squatching. At one point, I think we consider ourselves researchers. I think at this point it's just more like experiencers on a journey, But one thing that really resonated with me is in Bigfoot Unveiled, and partially a little bit in Quantum, was just how huge the spiritual component of this phenomenon really is. and I don't mean in a religious way. You know, you talk about elevating your vibration levels, and I am so tuned into that because I really believe that as I've worked on some personal growth and tried to incorporate meditation into my life and a few other things. The amount of interaction, and that's amongst the five of us from the Arizona Four guys. You know, we've all had almost like a spiritual awakening as a result of this stuff, and we've found that when we've really concentrated on that aspect of it internally, the external experiences have grown, significantly as a result. And you talk very, very at length about what I believe is the exact same thing. And I'm curious, what was your journey to get to that spot? I've always felt like back 50 years ago, you were more, for lack of a better term, part of the dying breed of apers that were out there. And I've seen you come full circle and really kind of, to me, it's almost like you've led the vocal public charge about just how important that part of this thing is if we want to understand these entities and what they're about and maybe gain some sort of access to them. I'd love to hear you talk about that for a second.
Yeah, sure. I'm glad you're there. Well, the whole thing about Bigfoot has brought me to this level of thinking. And as you've probably read in my book, it gets more into the ethereal part of our soul, our spirit, because I think I've established in that book, my recent book anyway, for sure, that they have a human component to them. And that's because of the studies we've had done and the professors that are behind it. So that led me into what we are as humans and how important it is that we do right while we're here. It's just, anyway, it wasn't an overnight thing. I've been working on this for over 50 years now, but Al Berry, who we took in 1972 to kind of document this stuff and see what's going on, he said, he had a master's degree in science and said, don't talk about the spooky stuff up here because it'd be thrown in the monkey farm. Anyway, we didn't for a long time. And I just, but now I do because I think it's important. And more people over the years I've talked to have encountered the same thing. They didn't record it like we did and have it studied like we did. And that's what makes this story unique, is because it has the science behind it that establishes that it's credible and no one can debunk it. And no one has yet because they can't, because it was real. And
the sounds themselves you're talking about, right? Like the vocal recordings. Yeah, you took a deep dive into researching and kind of validating that, which I think is amazing.
Yeah, and I think I validate most of what I say in the book with science. Like energy and matter interchangeable. Dr. Paul Dirac won Nobel Prize in 1933 for the mathematical equation, which established that material, like we're made of, everything's energy, frequency, and vibration, but we're made at the most minute level. We are energy vibrating at a frequency. So he got the Nobel Prize in 1933 for antimatter, which established that. Because it wasn't until 2012, when the Hadron Collider had two particles collide and turn into energy. Well, that was a big deal, which I think very few people really realize how big a deal that was. But it shows that energy and matter are definitely interchangeable. So then you get these stories for eons about these things disappearing. How do they do that? How do they stop not leaving more trackways? How's that happen? Well, it happens through that frequency. They can somehow find the frequency to change their matter into energy and back again. And I think they were here long before we were. Let me back up and say just a minute. They're not all the same. They don't all have the same attributes because aliens have been here, they're here now, and they've manipulated with the different species on this planet. And it's just what they created, what their agenda put into them, but they're DNA manipulated, and including us. We're hybrids, also. We were manipulated. So there we go. And I don't know if that answered anything you asked me or not, but I get off track pretty easy. So
no, that's good. I do have a question that I want to ask real quick. So I was listening to you on multiple podcasts. I was at work at the dental office today and I had my earbuds in. I'm like, wow, this is some really good stuff. And I heard you talking about the DNA, the research studies that Melba Ketchum did with finding that the mitochondrial DNA for the Bigfoot, like as far as the human side from the mother, it was part human, but then you have the unknown part of that. And I heard you talking about the Anunnaki and the gods that came from the sky and the Elohim. Would you care to elaborate on that and your theories as far as what these beings are and how they are able to manipulate, I guess, time, space, and matter?
Yeah, it all goes back into research. I raised biblically. I knew scriptures pretty well, but none of this stuff was matching that I could find with anything in the text. So I had to reach back to how these texts were written, who wrote them, what went on. It gets you all the way back into Mesopotamia when the Sumerian text, the cuneiform text, was written. And that's the oldest known written form of language they know of. That was 3400 BCE. And you get into that and you find a lot of truths that are there, at least from Sumerian standpoint. But what was happening was powerful beings came down from the sky and they inbred with humans and they started doing these strange things. They could manipulate things. They were manipulating DNA and they were crossbreeding with women. And that falls right into Genesis 1 and 2, except instead of 1 and 2 chapters, it's several thousands of years goes by there. Right. And I think that's kind of important for us to understand just how old and how long things have been going on. And aliens have been coming in for eons, and this is a fine planet. I've got to tell you, we're screwing up here right now. But they came here, and they were called the Anunnaki. And they fought over things. They became human, or semi-human, I should say, because they took on third-dimensional density. Mm-hmm. So anyway, I get into that, and it's kind of fun when you start looking into it, because you realize just all those things I was reading biblically in the Hebrew text, the core of all that came from cuneiform texts, which now they've been translated. There's over 10,000 of them. They're clay tablets with written inscriptions, and they're not hieroglyphs. They're actual language written and scribed by the Sumerians. So there's that. Did that answer your question?
Yes, it did.
I got turned on to Zecharia Sitchin a long time ago, and I always felt, especially when it comes to the Sasquatch phenomenon, that there's biblical value in Genesis, but I think it's always been too narrow an interpretation for me. And I mean, obviously things like the Book of Enoch flesh that out a bit more, but absolutely. And I don't know that Sitchin hit home runs every time, but he's the one who opened my eyes to a lot of that. And then, I don't know that he got it all right, but I always felt that he broadened the interpretation enough to include a biblical narrative within that realm, but also to really open my eyes to, things like in Genesis where they're giving different names to the Anunnaki, but like you read the Sumerian tablets into Genesis, I mean, it's literally almost partially the same story, just the names have been changed a bit, but the entire story's identical. And that opened my eyes, like you, to, okay, just how big is this? And what's beyond it that we really don't know? It asks so many more questions.
When I first got into this and started saying these things, everybody said, well, you must go along with Sitchin. Well, I've never read Sitchin. I got to tell you that. I've never read it. And that throws me over. Everybody thinks I'm taking all this stuff out of Stitchin's book, but I haven't. And it just kind of fits with me. And then somebody just comes to me, and somebody comes from just studying a lot, looking into things myself. So anyway, yeah, I know Stitchin's got some, but I'm not sure he interpreted it. What I'm finding out is Stitchin really didn't interpret this stuff. He just, because it really didn't get interpreted until, let's say, 1800 and something, but he took a lot of the interpretations from that. So it might not have been 100% on, but it was close. The Anunnaki, the different deities that were coming down and crossbreeding. And you're right, it fits right in with a lot of biblical texts, but it's also a lot more expanded. And like you say, the Book of Enoch, which really, if you get the Ethiopian Ethiopian Bible, it's got 88 books in it instead of 66 like ours.
Right.
It's got the full book of Enoch in it.
Ethiopian Orthodox, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, you're on it there. So
Right on,
it's
man.
fun. It's really fun.
It is.
Because
So
we're in a special time.
We are.
Ron,
Go ahead.
would you care to tell us your first experience or your first encounter or sighting with Sasquatch?
Okay.
And then go from that into like how that progressed over the years.
Okay. All right. Once upon a time, well, I got fun with this. You know, I do. It's important to be happy in this world. And back then, we were all kind of we were all spiritual people, whether we like it or not. That's what we are. Religious, we can take it or leave it. It's a form of control, I think. A lot of religions are. And you kind of wake up to that. But when it first started with me is when I started going up there and hearing these sounds myself and recording them, and it just goes on from there. We was looking for the ape in the woods, like so many researchers still are, you know, which I think they're doing themselves an injustice by sticking with that parameters they got drawn for themselves. And really, it takes classical and quantum sciences together to have clear perception, and that's Tesla's statement. No, Edgar Mitchell, excuse me, said that. Tesla said, well, one man calls God, another one calls the laws of physics. So if you really want to understand how everything works, according to Dr. physicist Christopher Brer, West Texas A&M, everything from the atom throughout the cosmos works on the laws of quantum physics. And yet everybody's stuck in this 1687 classical science of Newtonian physics. And I think they're doing themselves an injustice by not reaching out and expanding their research. If they are researchers, they call themselves researchers. But you know, I've had my feet on the ground. I've encountered these things on several occasions, and they're not just a normal flesh and blood entity running around. Of course, nothing is, in my opinion, is just flesh and blood. We all have a etherical part to us, a soul, a consciousness. Things that really mean more important than what Bigfoot might be. You know? That's why I try to delve into that. But I felt like I had to say the word Bigfoot so I get the audience I wanted by my book. So they want to read, because that's all I'm all about nowadays, is just trying to cross the gap between the flesh and blood only people and people out there pounding on trees and screaming, and get them to understand there's more going on. You know, we don't see everything there is to see. We don't smell everything there is to smell. We don't hear everything there is to hear. Our human characteristics we're limited. Our telomeres have been chopped off. You know, we only can live so many years. And but men used to live hundreds and if not thousands of years. And
you talk
but
about
anyway, we got a
Bigfoot unveiled. You talked about the same thing, you know, about being able to see within a certain visual spectrum beyond, and being able to hear in a certain audio spectrum, that just because we don't perceive it in our humanness doesn't mean it doesn't exist. You know what I mean?
Well,
Like,
some people say if I can't see it, it's not real. Right. Well, you only see with 430 and 770 terahertz. That's our visual light frequency. Everything's frequency, energy, and vibration. I'll probably say that several times before the show's over. Everything. So you find the frequency of anything, according to Einstein, you can change its matter. Well, to me, that's how miracles are done. Some people are able to find that frequency, as I say, some people. But I think Bigfoot can do that. They can find the frequency that's supposed to be to change their matter into energy or do whatever they want. Your mind speak that way if they find the energy you're in, the frequency you're in, I mean. So it just goes on and on. Oh,
absolutely.
Well, I see these notes coming. Go ahead. That was my first, how I started out. We started taking tape recorders up there. We took Albury up there in 72, and he was the investigative reporter, master's degree in science, but he was looking for the hoax, which I didn't know. But Warren Johnson, the leader of our group, he wrote a 23-page letter to Ivan Sanderson, the cryptozoologist, and Ivan Sanderson thought he was getting his leg pulled, so he sent it to Peter Byrne, who was in Oregon at a primate center there looking for Bigfoot. Peter thought the same thing. Peter just passed away recently, by the way. Him and I became good friends. And Peter sent it down to Allenberry, who was in California, closer to us, so he drove all the way down the valley to interview us. and interviewed us, and we ended up inviting him in 1972. He started experiencing the same thing. Couldn't find anybody who was pulling a hoax, even though he wanted that. He was really trying. But I tell you, when you walk into that area and you see how dense it is, how remote it is, and how imposing it is, and then you get there and you're in like a little heaven right there at camp, and it's wonderful. We got our own spring right there. It caught on fire when I was up there with David Paulides in 2018. I took him up there to do a filming, but it underburned right where our camp is. So even though the site's still there, it's never going to go away. Land don't change, but our shelters that was taken down in 2015 actually.
Yeah, I remember hearing about that the Forest Service dismantled your shelter or something.
Well, they didn't. They threatened the Johnsons because they knew who was going up there by somebody told them. I think it's probably the Pack Service that was taking the Johnson brothers in because they didn't want to walk that. It's opposing walk and going on horseback. As long as your horses know how to walk a trail, you're okay. But if you got a bad horse or one that's not used to it, which I've had one or two, they can go off that cliff or they can fall or something. And plus, it's just a thing to get to. And, but anyway, he did a interview with me at our camp. David did. I'm in episode Missing 411, The Hunted.
The Hunted. Yeah, I saw that. Yeah. I saw you.
But he redid this light form that we saw, this tube of light that went floating by us up there. What do you do with something like that? It's not a round orb, which we've had up there, but this is just a tube of light that comes from over there. And he had me point, because it happened 2 years before when he was up there. Right. Had me point just how the light went, and he reproduced that in the film, which is pretty cool. He did a really good job of that.
What's your feeling on that type of light phenomenon? I mean, we've seen orbs. I think we're of the mind that these seem to be able to blink into an energy state almost at will. They're not. I mean, there's definitely a flesh and blood element to them, but they seem to have the ability. I hate that term cloaking. I don't know that that's what they do. Maybe it is, but I've always felt that I've seen them literally disappear and orbs be right there right afterwards. Multiple times. So I've always curious. Do you think that's what they are, or do you think it's something else?
I don't know. But it's a form of energy. Orbs are. Because what we were watching was definitely controlled. It was a form of some type of intelligence. Whether it was you've heard of Skinwalker Ranch. Well, if these things can change their matter into energy and then back into something else, they could change it into a wolf or something else if they wanted to. I thought I saw two wolves up there one time, and this one guy at a campsite a few miles away, he said he's seen 7 wolves up on a mountainside one time. And I said, "You mean coyotes?" Because he said, "No, they're wolves." Now, wolves aren't supposed to be in that area in the Sierras. They haven't been for years, they say. But my granddaughter and my daughter both, here's what happened. My daughter had a sighting. It was a long day and long story, but I twisted my wrist. I broke a rib coming off that mountain because we couldn't get there. Scott Nelson and I couldn't. And we drove around to where my daughter was camped out, and we stayed there that night. And I was kind of convalescing from all this. And my daughter had a sighting early that morning, just at dawn. She saw this thing go by through the meadow right there. And something had been messing with them all night long. And they was up, her and my granddaughter was up by the fire pretty much all night long. And something was around them. They didn't know what, but they could have just been freaked out too. It's kind of, you don't know. And, but she had that sighting that morning. We found the trackway, and it stopped. I mean, it was deep. It just going right through there, and couldn't see where it went. I got up and started looking for it myself, and it just couldn't have gone to a tree. It couldn't have gone to a boulder. Couldn't have gone to a brush. Could have gone anywhere. Mm-hmm. So that falls right back into Fred Beck's story from 1924, the Mount St. Helens, when he said he shot one. Prior to that, they'd followed a trackway. And that trackway, he said, it would have had to jump 160 feet to have not left another track. Well, I've had other people say the trackway's just stopped. Well, most researchers say, well, then it's been phonied up, helicopter must have picked them up. Something like
Right,
that.
yeah.
Well, it
8 miles
levitated.
in the middle of nowhere. Sure,
Yeah, levitated. Well, the one I saw finally in 1974, the night I recorded the Samurai Cry, I saw it coming down through the trees. It was almost like it's floating. It was really fast.
Right.
And we had another one, adolescent, we think the mother, down there, and I think it was going to them. I think the young ones are getting a little more bold and a little more curious or something like that. They want to play with you because really they do play with you. They mess with you. And without, we should have seen them more often. I got to tell you that. We all got glimpses. I say Al Berry never got a glimpse. Donald never got a glimpse because they wouldn't go back up there. But Johnson brothers both got glimpses. Anyway, Larry Johnson, Warren Johnson's son, saw one right out through the cracks of the shelter wall. And he said it was between 8 and 10 foot tall. It's measured the track. The next morning it was a 19-inch track. So gives you kind of a little, yeah. But anyway, where was I going with that? I forgot where I was going with that, but it's anyway. Our tracks are different. I don't think they're all the same. I back up right there again because I think what we had up there was a pure form of an alien of some type. Maybe a Bigfoot that just been made. I don't know, but I know this: they had language, and I've established that in my new book. How you got Dr. Curlin, who says they have a voice range that outside, inside, and below and above the human range, the average human range. They can talk like we can talk if they wanted to. They can make sounds like we can't make. It represented an animal. This one little clip that he did of over 8 foot tall. And then you got Scott Nelson, a cryptolinguist who's trained by the military to transcribe codes to see if it's a code, if it's a language, an unknown language. If it is, does it represent anything something bad? He's a 2-time graduate of the school, and I had him vetted very carefully. He was very few guys can do what he does, really. Anyway, they get into Dr. Lieberman, Philip Lieberman, Brown University, says only humans have the voice mechanism to create sapient talk like I'm talking now. We have that. We have that attribute in us as humans. These things have that. Now, you got to deduct that there's a human component. That brings forth Melba Ketchum's study. It brings forth this other study that was done in the Himalayas by the eDNA study from a geneticist that says it was 99% human, the mitochondrial. Nuclear DNA they couldn't identify, just like Melba Ketchum could. So she's going to get vindicated because all academia gave her a thumbs down because they said there's a human component in it. Had to be contaminated. Well, bull. She was very careful.
She was never going to be given a validated platform for that. That was never going to happen.
Absolutely.
It didn't matter. I mean, we don't know. I mean, I've talked to David, and Bettina and I both knew Scott a little bit. I mean, we kind of know that, and I know Melba. You know what I mean? There's just no way that she was going to be given that voice, man. That was going to be destroyed from the get-go. Dave knew.
Right. Well, the problem is she took her personal thoughts into it with the Nephilim and the biblical translation of giants and sky people and stuff like that, which is accurate if you get into the Anunnaki.
The academic crowd.
The Anunnaki were sky people, powerful ones from the sky, and even Satan is called a shiny one. So
right.
Anyway, it's kind of. Go ahead, Brian. You're wanting to say something, Mark. Did I go far enough with my trail? This quantum physics stuff didn't just dawn on me. It came through time. I kept looking into it, and wow, that answers that. And I asked Jeff about that, when I was in Russia, actually Moscow. He didn't want to talk to me about quantum physics because he's a classical scientist. And classical scientists have to stay within the parameters of their profession. Otherwise, they'll lose credibility with their colleagues. That's how most all of them are. It's hard to get any academia to take on this subject. Al was very lucky to get Dr. Curlin to take it on. He took it on unbiasedly.
Justify that education, man.
Mm-hmm. Well, you got to protect it. That's what they do. They protect it because the grants, all that stuff, the money, everything for what they want to do.
Ron, why do you think all the secrecy when it comes to these cryptids like Bigfoot and Dogman? Why do you think that they're covering this up? Is it because they know that the DNA is basically something that's going to bring to the light the whole supernatural aspect of this, or what do you think is really going on?
Yeah, bingo. I think you hit it. Yeah, they can't explain what they can't explain it and give you some kind of a narrative. They're going to make fun of it or hide it. And most of the time they just hide it or make fun of it, like they did Roswell crash, from the UFO. The government's only going to give you what they think you can handle or what they can control. It's all been that way since eons. And anybody in charge of a bunch of people, whether it be a king, a ruler, or emperor, whoever it is, they're going to control what the people think and what they let the people have. Yeah, they know that these things are out there. I'm sure they do. But again, once they let that out, if they do, which they're going to have to do it just like they did the UFO scenario, once they do, it's going to throw a curve into religion. It's going to throw a curve into history books. It's going to throw everybody for a loop. So I think it's got to present itself little by little, and they're only going to let us have what they can until these things really start showing up a lot more. Same with the aliens. When they start showing up a lot more, people are already being indoctrinated into aliens. They're already believing them because the government said they can now. What do I hear?
Now, that's very interesting, and I was just wondering too, like when it comes to these cryptids and stuff like that, like with the research, do you think that they are like, how are they able to cloak? How do you think that they're able to cloak?
Here's how I think they can cloak. I mentioned it earlier in the first part of this, but energy and matter are interchangeable. If they can create the frequency, if they know the frequency to change their matter into energy, they would cloak. They'd go out of our perception, and that's what I think they do. They use the laws of antimatter, and that's again established by CERN in 2012. So that's how they cloak. And I know some very, very, very credible people who saw them do that. First, you just kind of put those up on a shelf, but I had a guy up in Alaska tell me one time, he took me to a spot where he seen one disappear. And I put him on a shelf because I couldn't answer that one, But I think I answer it now with the quantum physics. And that's the laws of physics again. We only see within certain frequencies. And we don't see how good as a cat can see. A lot of things can see better than we can. A lot of animals with different spectrums.
Ron, on an interview that I was listening to earlier today when I was just checking some stuff out, because there was a lot of interesting things I heard. And one of the things that you had said was that these beings have the ability to easily manifest from physical to an, what do you call it, ethereal or paranormal, supernatural type of presence or state of being. And you were saying that at one point in time, I don't know if you said at one point in time we had that same ability, like opening up the third eye or something like that. We had those abilities, but we've forgotten over time. Can you kind of go into that?
Yeah, we really haven't forgotten them. Our DNA's been changed, so we can't get to them anymore. That's why we only live 120 years now since that apple fell or whatever it was. Let's see. Let me answer your question. What was your question? Excuse me.
No, that was interesting. You said so. Our DNA was changed. Like, is that? I guess. Like, do you feel like that?
Yeah, we were created. We were created like the Anunnaki, ninth-dimensional beings, in my opinion, the very high frequential beings. So let us make man in our image. Some religions say that's body, soul, and spirit. Well, sure it is, but it's more than that. We were made in the image of something very high frequential, and that's where our destiny is that. It's supposed to be. But we're never going to get there if AI gets in the way. I wrote a part on that too. Artificial intelligence is going to eat us up if we're not careful. In fact, they're going to eat us up anyway. We just got to be on the ready for it.
One more.
We're in a third dimension.
No, keep going. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, we're in a three-dimensional environment. We're made to be in a three-dimensional environment so we can experience things. That's all we're here for, to experience issues. More importantly than the experience is how we respond to the experience. We have to respond to experiences with compassion and love and caring, instead of with warring and hurting people and being somebody gets hurt all the time. Victim, that's the word I'm looking for. Too many people
I
are victims.
love that. I believe that. I love that thinking that we're here, like, you hear that we're spiritual beings in a physical reality undergoing a process, right? And
Yeah,
I
right.
believe that, and that connects to the Sasquatch people as well. In some way, I don't think I know what that connection is, other than the fact that the more I try and elevate myself as a person and be kinder and work on those internal things, they seem to acknowledge that, or like my experiences and the group of guys I'm out with, all of our experiences have grown so much as a result of trying to work on those things and trying to bring love and compassion into all my decision making.
Good. You're elevating your frequency, your personal frequency, because when you pass from this body, you're going to go either got to come back and learn what you didn't learn the first time, or you're going to elevate yourself into the fifth or fourth. You got to go through the fourth first and see where you're going to go. You're going to advance on to the fifth and sixth. And I think a lot of this is my opinion now, but I think that a lot of dimensions, fifth and sixth, is where a lot of aliens are, and that's where ghosts are seen in the fourth dimension of time. Once you're out of this three-dimensional linear time don't exist like we perceive it now, day after. See, if you really think about it, tomorrow don't exist. It can't exist because we're in the now. Yesterday don't exist. It's just a memory, but because we're in the now, so it don't exist anymore. We're in the now all the time, and that leads you to think in the physics where nothing's real to observe. Well, until you observe it through the light's frequency, it's not real. Funny. But it's
you talked about that in Quantum Bigfoot, some of the that proved what you just said about some of these light experiments going through. I can't remember the exact part, but they were going through. They were putting light through a hole in a box, and like they were proving that what was beyond it wasn't existing until the light hit it, until we visually captured it. Then we kind of manifested into its being, but it wasn't there prior to. That was the gist of it. My brain melts with that stuff.
Very much like Schrodinger's cat. You don't know if it's dead or alive till somebody observes it. They talk about the split experiment, which they shoot a particle through slit, and it splits into two, and then when the waves cross, well, that shows you. Anyway, I get into better than that in my book. Forgot about it now. But yeah, and we find out the protons, electrons they can match up across the universe. They will talk to each other. So Einstein said nothing can go faster than light. Well, he was on nothing. Well, our consciousness can.
So here's a question. Here's a question for you. So back when I was still actively engaged in a lot of photography and videography, kind of like the research journey before we just put the cameras down on purpose, But back in those days, it's like you can't try and take pictures in these areas of structures and not start seeing things in timestamps, and not all of it is Sasquatch related. There was all kinds of other, I call them others, like dimensional beings, for lack of a better term, that the camera seems to be able to pick up what we don't have our own physical visual acuity to do. And I always wonder, like, when you talk about these beings in other dimensions, fifth, sixth dimensions, so do you believe that they're like in the same realm, space that we're in, but just in a veil of dimension that we don't have access to, but yet they're earthbound as well?
Well, there's the thing. We do have access to it. It's all in our consciousness, because you can elevate all the way through. Take Christ, for example. He was obviously way up there, and he said we could do what he does. So we are not doing that, though. But I think it's all about connecting, getting your heart in coherence with your brain, because our brain is outside. It's been conditioned since day one by what it hears, what it's been taught, what teachers tell you, what your parents do. It's all been conditioned to believe certain things. Well, your heart receives from your pineal gland, and it's got a brain too, and it's going to tell you. It's called a gut feeling in my book. And when that gut feeling tells you to do something, your brain's going to talk you out of it with what it knows. Most of the time.
I always thought you were talking about like alignment, basically aligning your heart to your head and leaning into that, as opposed to, like you said,
Yes.
kind of unlearning everything that we've been indoctrinated into, and then opening myself up to, for lack of a better term, the unknown, but following the instinct more in what I feel inside, as opposed to, you talk about emotions, and like the emotional intelligence is kind of what I've always taken from your take on that, you know?
Very good. Yeah, I think that's right on. You got to get your head to listen to your heart and get out of that condition that's been given to you, which most stuff is.
Absolutely,
You
man.
can't get rid of it because we live in a 3-dimensional world. So you have to live in it. You have to live in it, to experience it. That's what 3, 6, and 9 is all about. I think is we leave our 3rd-dimensional embodiment behind. We go to the 6th dimension. That's our goal anyway. If we learn what we're supposed to learn, which is the oneness that we all are, and then learn love and compassion for other people, because God is love. That's biblical too. But you can't elevate yourself any further than that if you've been given an AI body or something. Your consciousness has been transferred into artificial intelligence, which I think is coming, and that's why I call that one chapter in my book a wolf in sheep's clothing. That's what I call it.
Right.
A wolf in sheep's clothing.
I read Timothy Alberino's book, the one he just put out, which is basically about adding dominion on earth, birthright, and he really takes a deep dive into where AI sits, the idea of transhumanism, and then losing our possible biblical dominion, God-given dominion over the earth as a result of things like AI, and as a result of kind of twisting our genetic birthright out of having enough of that in us to be able to continue as the stewards of our planet. It's a really interesting read, obviously from a very Christian biblical lens, but also well thought out, well fleshed out, and it kind of ties into what you're talking about,
It sounds like it does, yeah, because our goal is to be the 9th dimensional. We were made in the likeness of the Anunnaki. Not all Anunnaki were bad. Just a third, so many of them defaulted, I should say. But that's where the Palladians come in. That's where a lot of very good ones are out there. And we're made in the likeness of that type being. And we got to understand who we are as humans and really take charge of what we're thinking, how we're thinking, and how we're responding to our experiences. That's my take on it.
Now,
so we
Ron,
can develop and get into the 9th dimension. Excuse me.
I want to talk to you about the Sierra sounds, because that is one of the main things that you got out there on recording. And what year was that? And can you explain and let everybody know about? I will play some of the audio in a few minutes, but can you let everybody know about the Sierra sounds and how were you able to capture that? Because a lot of people are unable to capture that audio.
Yeah, I should have got into that earlier, probably, I guess, build it up to what I'm doing now. But we started recording in 1971.
Go ahead.
1971, and then we would go up there every year and record. And a lot of times they'd come in, sometimes they wouldn't. And this went on through 76. So we got a lot of recordings. All of us did. Some of us are passed away now. I don't know where the recordings went, but I got some of mine because mine burned up in a house fire, but I was able to recapture some of them from copies that I had. And Bill McDowell, my good friend, who's a horsebacker, him and I were the packers in the group. He's got his, but he would come back with his cassettes and transfer them onto reel-to-reel, so we could hold more and use the cassette over. Al Berry, who we took up there, who actually fostered the sounds at the University of Wyoming, he didn't do that. He used a cassette once, and that was it. And that's how they were able to be studied. Because once they've been used once, you can't really study them to see that. Because we showed our sounds had not been manipulated, had not been speeded up, slowed down. No 60-cycle hum. Made time of recording. There's nothing artificial about it. And this is a professor of electrical engineering at the University of Wyoming that determined that after a year of study. And so, as far as the credibility, no one can debunk him, even though Joe Rogan tries. He don't know what he's talking about. I shouldn't say he's a smart guy, But for him to say that they're phony, he's got to do his research a little better before he starts talking like that. He's never had me on, to really show him, and I could show him some facts if he'd just open up a little bit. But he's too big now, I guess. Anyway, Sarah recordings have been known now.
Who was that one?
Huh? Joe Rogan. You know him?
Who did you say tried to debunk it? Oh, God.
Joe Rogan.
Yes, but
you don't know how because you don't know the facts. You can't debunk them because too many people looked at him. That show the
No,
proof
I know
is
who
out.
you're talking about. He shouldn't even be in this genre.
Well, anyway, I don't
No,
care.
yeah, like I understand.
Well, I
I
do
don't
care.
know why he had a voice in this. Like he's not.
I know. I do care what he says because he's got like millions of listeners.
Got a big audience.
What he said, yeah, what he says means something to some people.
He's been very disparaging to the phenomenon as a whole, which is kind of strange because literally everything else with him is on the table. But when you get into the cryptid Sasquatch stuff, he just shuts down, man. He gets kind of disparaging about it.
Yeah, he don't understand. That's okay.
His loss.
That's his loss because he could.
It is.
Yeah. So anyway, where were we on the Sarah sounds? Oh yeah, it wasn't until anyway, I made a couple CDs with the sounds on them embedded with the story. Jonathan Frakes of Star Trek narrates the first CD that I produced, and down in Burbank, California, and then I produced another CD years later, and that's my voice and my story with sounds embedded in that too. And I have the 3 books. Voices in the Wilderness, which they're doing a documentary on now, I think. And in that book, though, you can download a link that's on there, and it'll play the sound that I'm talking about. It's my chronicle. And, a lot of people get that because I can get some of the sounds too. And I don't know why I started talking about that. Anyway, Scott Nelson added a lot to it by saying they have a language. Huh? You cut out. Who were talking?
Oh yeah, am I here?
Were you afraid?
You are.
Go ahead,
Was
Chris.
I afraid?
No. My connection got a little screwy for a second, but
that was something. Yeah.
That's
was
what I
afraid?
Asked you. Yeah, Ron. When you were recording all of this, were you afraid?
You're just a little tense. You're not. I wasn't afraid. I learned that fear is your only enemy. Really, it's the fear that's going to feed these things one way or the other. I tell people that when they're out looking for the Dogman or something bad, because whatever you think about most and whatever you fear the most is going to come to you. I believe that. So I think if these people don't want to have scary experiences, stop thinking about scary things and just realize who you are as a human, that you have dominion and you can call this off if you want it. But was I afraid?
I think you're right.
I should have been. That was something Joe Rogan talked about. He said, those guys, it couldn't be real. Those guys would be afraid. Well, first of all, we've been dealing with them already for 3 years. This is 71. This was in 74.
Well,
he was saying that. And, we realized they weren't going to eat us. They weren't going to carry us away in their sleeping bag. We were going to be okay. So it was kind of exciting. And no, I was not afraid. And I think that's what had a lot to do with why they came in so close and started doing what they were doing. And people think, well, you get up and get out of there. Well, you can't just get out of there. You're 8 miles in the wilderness. It's dark, wooded. Even if you know the way, which I know it very well, you're not just going to walk out of there at night, especially when you know something else is out there. However, we were heavily armed. I got to tell you that part. We were heavily armed all the time. That didn't seem, because they knew our intent. We wasn't going to shoot at them unless we got attacked. And that never happened. So I can say truthfully that I wasn't afraid. I was a little, you get a little tense when they're right next to you outside the shelter's wall, dropping around. But still, you think you're okay because it's some kind of an ape that you can shoot, right? But I'm not sure a bullet, anything like that would have stopped them. Didn't stop the one.
I don't know how effective firearms are with those things. I think that one of the things that the guys that what we bring in there is what we get reflected back. Like that's been our experience, because we've had uplifting and good experiences, not any negative ones, but we've had 1 or 2 guys that have asked to come up with us and go out with us, and they've left in the middle of the night. Some of them, like we've had, people that we came in with fear, people that came in with maybe something twisted inside, and I think they've gotten that reflected back on them. I've witnessed that. So I think you're absolutely right. Like the vibe that you take in there, and they seem to know your heart and know your intentions. I believe that.
I emphasize that a lot with people is control your fear and make sure you got people with you that can do the same thing, because you bring one bad apple into it he's going to shoot one, get the money shot or something, you don't have a chance to learn anything. And we're already all trying to learn, all of us are. And even though the apers out there are just apers, they have to have an experience before they're ever going to get out of that box. Right. That's what I think.
We had a guy come up that we kind of vet people a little bit, and this is like 2 years ago. We had a guy and he came up and he literally left at like 2:00 in the morning up on the rim and drove out, and we found out, and he failed to mention to us that his first experience, which is in the White Mountains, he took a shot at one of these things, out of fear, whatever. But we've always thought that he brought that in with him, and he wasn't honest with us about that prior to, and they kind of drove him right out of there. That was how he took it. He was petrified.
We are a warring species. Bottom line, we are a warring species, and we tend to kill things and shoot at things we don't understand. And when they took me up to Portlock, Alaska here a couple of years ago, the Discovery Channel did, and I flew over in a helicopter quite a bit before we landed, and I seen where they heavily timbered it years and years ago. And you see the new growth coming out. I say new growth, they were still big, but they weren't as big as the old growth. And then I seen pictures of when I don't know if anybody knows that story or not, but in case they don't, this village in Portlock, Alaska got abandoned in the late 40s, 1950.
Another story.
Yeah, and supposedly some monster-like Bigfoot creature was killing them, dismembering them. And so 30 of them, they just abandoned the whole village. But the fishing was outstanding. I mean, I've seen the pictures of the fish they were taking in, and they were also timbering it, and they're also mining it. And so my advice to them was, I said, what I think happened up here is you were encroaching in somebody's territory and they didn't like it. And right. You were cutting the trees down. They really don't like cutting trees down. I got to test. Had more reports over the years of them cutting trees than just about any time.
Loggers seem to have negative encounters,
Yeah. Anyway, they do have something in Portlock. I do believe that. But I believe that I told them what to do, what I would recommend. I didn't tell them what to do. They trying to get me to tell them how to re-habituate it because they want to open up their fishing village again. It's owned by the tribe. And I said, well, come back here, just 2 or 3 of you, and stay as long as you can. And with no cameras and no trickery going on, just be here and see what happens, and respect the property, respect the environment. That's what we all need to do, respect the environment more. And,
agreed.
So I said, if you don't come back, well, everybody will know what happened. Don't re-habituate.
We'll start cutting trees down again.
Well, yeah.
Chris, I wanted
anyway.
A question from the chat for Ron real quick. Steve Wolf says, Ron, do you have any of the sounds recorded of the camp being destroyed when it wasn't?
No, we didn't. Means. It woke us up. We didn't have the tape recorder going. No, I know what he's talking about. The night we thought it was being destroyed, and we looked out there, and nothing had changed. That's weird, but that's not the only weird thing. But we weren't recording all the time like probably we should have been. Okay. But hunting camp, we were all ready to go hunting about 5 o'clock in the morning. One of those things. But yeah, you hear
mimic anything, any sound. It's been our experience that they can mimic virtually almost like car doors opening and shutting. Like they could mimic things that are, mechanical even. Or so that wouldn't.
I know when I was up there last when I had my last encounter and heard them was in 2011, and I heard them chatter. That's the last time I heard them chatter. And immediately something was walking around my little tent I'd set up. And something hit a little barrel we had there, throw our trash in. and I heard it breathing out there and all. I thought, oh man, because earlier that evening I heard a big knock on the tree, real loud. Now I thought then it's just a wood knock, but in retrospect it might have been their energy. It's going to sound strange, but their energy coming out of a tree. And I think they can re-energize in a tree, and that's one thing just bad for trees.
I've heard that before.
I've heard people say they've actually seen them go in and out of a tree. And
a guy in Washington talks about that, you know.
Yeah, native lore says they live in two worlds. They can disappear and they live in trees. Well, what do you do with that? But there's a lot of Native American lore that people just ignore. But they've been here on this continent a lot longer than us. And
now,
absolutely, to dismiss their traditions and their history is absolute hubris, man. You know, I mean,
it's wrong. Yeah, you got to show respect for that, and it's not shown enough respect for. But anyway, strange things have happened up there. I talk about that in my books, but it's just you got to get answers, because I think everything that exists, if it's a problem, it has an answer. You know, otherwise it wouldn't be a problem. But where does the answer come from? Most of what happened to us, strange thing didn't happen from Newtonian physics.
Absolutely.
It's happened through quantum physics.
Ron, I wanted to play real quick, like a quick audio from the Sierra Sounds. The Sierra Sounds, and I know you had several clips from this, but I'm going to play it real quick for the people in the audience, what was going on. Now, I'm going to play this, and you just let me know because some people put stuff out there and they claim it's your stuff, but then let's see.
That's mine. That's why I was talking to him. I was mimicking him back.
Now, this one, that particular audio has some samurai chatter in it. And if y'all are confused, or if y'all couldn't hear that too good in the chat, then just type in Ron Morehead Sierra Sounds. There's plenty of different audio, different times it's been uploaded. Check it out. And stuff like where the I guess male Bigfoot and the female Bigfoot were arguing back and forth. That was terrifying. That growly evil, it sounded evil for what we would think would be demonic sounding. But did you hear that in real time, or were y'all just recording and didn't hear it until after the fact?
Oh, we heard it in real time, right outside our shelter.
Mm-mm.
And actually, the one with me, when you heard the bad one that you played the first time, that's more clear on my downloads, which is on my website too. But that's the night I saw one, Samurai Cry, and that was real time. We were outside the shelter, which is unusual. They had not messed with us like that where we're outside the shelter. They usually make all their sounds as we get inside and then come around, play with us. I say play with it. They think that we think we're smarter than them, but we're still looking for the ape in the woods in those days. You know, we had no idea how things really work. Like I think I do now.
There's no way I would have been able to stay out there all night long at all, period.
We didn't stay out there all night. We stayed out there about an hour. When they went away, which something caused them to go away, we did. We went back in the shelter and went to bed. And then the next morning is when I discovered they had gotten there before we had gotten there that day. I found freshly twisted alder up on the shelter's roof, and found a big track right outside there where Bill had dropped his dust cover off his rifle. It was leaning up on the track, so it means the track was made before we got there. Lot was said about that day. That was exciting. And it's all brought me to where I'm at today with this. The etherical part of humans.
I've got a question for you, Ron. I mean, I've been around this thing for a while, and like prior to the internet and the whole Aper kind of scenario, which was the most prevalent thing. In my opinion, it seems like the tide has definitely shifted more towards I hate to use the term woo, but for those of us that I would say just grosses me out. But for those of us that believe that there's definitely been more of a spiritual paranormal element to the cryptid phenomenon, Sasquatch in particular, as well, do you feel like I feel like we're in the majority at this point? We may not quite have the voice. I think platforms like Bettina's and obviously the digital age has opened up different avenues for those voices to get heard. I feel like we're in the majority at this point, and not that I hate to be divisive, because I just feel like they just haven't come around yet. That's kind of where my whole thing was. It doesn't seem like
That's how I feel.
yeah, right. I just feel like they don't even have a leg to stand on anymore, because the overwhelming amount of experiencers that I've heard over the course of many years, and I know you have as well. I felt like you led the charge partially in this thing as well, of kind of getting this alternative view regarding these entities and other ideas out there into the public. And it's really, to me, it's really shifted in a big way more towards this camp, and I'm grateful for that, because I think that's where the truth is,
I think you're right. If you feel right. I mean, I haven't counted the people, but I'm sure selling a lot of books. People are interested in it. And when I go to these meets, they're interested in what I have to say, because a lot of people have experienced unusual stuff. They call it the woo, the paranormal, all that stuff has been brought in. But quantum physics is a science recognized by all physicists everywhere. So it's the science that I think answers a lot of the questions that the woo and the paranormal have. Because if you have something happen strange, there's an answer for it. The answer may lie in the laws of quantum physics, and that's the laws that work throughout the universe.
I'm convinced you're right, especially the way you've broken it down in this,
Thank you.
and also quantum. I think we all leaned in that direction amongst my guys and our guys, but I think that to get it, that you fleshed it out in such a way that, it really opened my eyes a little bit more up into the way this stuff works, just the human inability to physically, like you see as a 3D entity, perceive these other things that are going on at the same time, catching glimpses of it, but not being attuned to it. That, and the way you describe it through, I think it's been our experience that traditional physics just don't seem to apply to these things at all, other than as they wish to engage in them. They don't seem to, they seem to be able to do things that we don't know how to do, either lost the ability to or haven't relearned it yet for whatever reason. But that's been our experience. You have to flesh it out with that.
Some of these guys are out there just looking for the ape in the woods and beating on trees. They just, they probably won't even read my book, or listen to what I have to say. Some of them will, and some of them have just a little bit. They're on the fence, well, maybe, but they got to be. Well, some of them might be just diluted down flesh and blood, but they got consciousness like we do. I think a lot of them are inbred or crossbred, I should say, with the native indigenous people. And I think a lot of them are more human-like than others. I think that's what the Patterson film represents. And ours weren't so that way. I think they were monstrously big. And I mean, the one that they saw was between 9, 8, and 10 foot tall. That wasn't the biggest one. We found a track up there 25 and a half inches with a 13-foot stride. And that's big. Now, how does something like that stay so hidden? How does it?
Here's one for you. So, over the course of my time out with this, I've had the opportunity to go to a lot of places, and obviously, but I've been out in Colorado. But I see the structure phenomenon everywhere. Really, if you're looking and you're really looking for it, even in obviously it's more prevalent like aspens and things that are just kind of pop out a little bit more. But I've seen structures that mimic almost some of Tesla's designs almost to a T, but in a natural environment. And I always took this one step further, that I've always felt that some of these structure areas were almost like conducting energy and like almost like a grid, and I don't know this, it's just a theory. Like virtually 99% of these things it's all conjecture in theory, really, But I've always felt that like perhaps these more diluted entities that maybe are genetically not as pure as maybe what their ancestors were may not be able to always enact some of this quantum physics phenomenon on their own. But if they're touching these structures and this what I perceive as almost like an energy grid, that maybe that's how they're able to maybe they can tap into that still and utilize that to their advantage. I know that sounds a little bit out there, but I've seen enough really weird things happen that goes along with things that you've just talked about, where they, some of them may not have that innate ability like their ancestors did, yet they can still access it a little bit easier than we can, and I always thought the structures played a part in that.
Interesting. Yeah. I don't know. Or none of us know, but actually what Peter Byrne used to say is, until you see somebody make it, you don't know who made it. I've been Boy Scout, whatever, hunting group, something like that.
Some of these places, there's no way of a scout F troop up there doing. Fire jumpers may have been there once, right?
Who knows?
Chris, I want to
Somebody
take
will know a lot more
from the chat. We're going to shut it down in the next 5 to 10 minutes or so. One question that you have from Shell Bay. Shell said, did you return to that area at some point? Do you think they migrated? But she's talking about where you first had the
I think they migrate in the wintertime because there's so much snow up there at that altitude. And they've been seen at the lower elevations of the Sierra Nevada mountains quite a bit. I've returned. Last time I was there was in 2018 with David Paulides and this filmer. And I do think they migrate, though. In fact, I was a pilot, and a lot of times I flew the guys. We flew to see where they migrated to, what canyon they might have went down, where the last sighting was, stuff like that. So, yeah, they migrate. Well, they follow the food. When they're in our dimension, our third dimensional environment, they have to comply with our rules. They eat, they poop, they procreate, they do everything we do. But they can be shot. But what happens then? You never find a body.
Y'all got 10 minutes. Y'all got 5 to 10 minutes left. It's just me. Adam is the next person that had a question for you, Ron. He said, is there a website where you can report your encounters aside from the multiple BFRO websites that is more centralized to all areas and not just in concentrated areas?
I don't know. I think the BFRO is one of the biggest ones, I think. There's a lot of people with
there
websites.
There should be an alternative.
Yeah.
It's a great idea.
That's where Scott Nelson found our sounds, was on the BFRO. And I used to be a curator for them years and years ago when Matt Moneymaker started that thing, because actually he came up and listened to my sounds before he started it. And he's the one that coined the samurai cry. He said, it sounds like a samurai. I was living in Washington. And so it became known as the samurai cry or samurai language.
Chatter.
There you are.
Samurai chatter, I've heard that.
And just like, who was it? Not Fred Beck, but Albert Ostman said when he got kidnapped and was held 6 days in British Columbia, he said they were chattering amongst themselves. A big male carried them off, and he was held
sleeping bag, right? Like they rolled him up and took him up into a cave or something, a family group.
Yeah, it was like a 10-acre bowl, he said in his book.
Yeah.
John Green wrote about that in Apes Among Us. He said they were chattering amongst themselves. Well, what's that mean? That's pretty much a language. It's cognitive language when they're talking to each other. And he said there was two adolescents, a male and a female, and then there was the female and him, the big male that carried him off. But how he escaped from that was kind of interesting. Everybody gave it the whole story a lot of credibility. But I flew up in my own airplane. I flew up into Toba Inlet and scoured that area for a long time looking for a bowl.
Talk about quantum physics. You talk about that trip in your second book.
Yeah, my second book I talked about the Albert Ostman incident.
We couldn't agree. Ron, the Eclipse Truth said, when and how did you come to the reality of Dogman?
Well, I still haven't come to the reality of it, other than the people that's behind reporting it. I believe their credibility. I've never saw one. But when you get Martin Groves and Daryl Denton and and Barton
Bettina
Nunley.
Moss.
I'm part of their little triad now. I guess you call her quadrad. I don't know.
What does he call it? Barton
Nunley.
Brotherhood of the Wolf.
Oh, there you are. Well, that's yeah. Anyway, they're great guys. I can't say enough good about them. And I believe Martin saw one just like he said he did, face to face. He's undeniable, and he's also a retired
Bettina had a pretty
deputy
incredible Dogman encounter.
law enforcement. You know, when he's been studying this thing and studying the land between the lakes for 30 years. Well, he still goes there, even though he's retired. And that's where he took me to where he saw that. And they was hoping I'd see one, but I told him, talk to you guys about fear. So now you're not going to see one because they feed on your fear. And they didn't.
Ron, have you ever had a conversation with Tim Coonbo Baker?
Don't recognize that name.
Wow, both of y'all are like big in this, and I really like for both of you guys to talk. But I think that'd be a great episode to have like you on a panel. Coonbo, Chris, who else would you say would be a good one for this panel?
Wait, who is that? Who is that again?
Tim Coonbo Baker. I'll fill you in on it after the show, but like he's
okay.
Can you explain
it,
Chris?
For a minute. He's been around for a minute, I mean, I have not paid attention to so many other people, especially and people that I know are legit. We're so busy doing our own thing, like Ron, maybe David, a few of these other guys. But Coonbo's been around for a while. I know Bettina knows him fairly well, and he's kind of in the vein of a Barton and a Martin Groves. Somebody credible and pretty well versed and been down the rabbit hole.
What state is he out of? What state is he out of?
He's here.
South, right?
He's here in Alabama. He's like 45 minutes away from me. I actually met him in person, and he used to. What was it? I'm trying to remember the name of that show. Bigfoot Outlaw Radio. It was him. It was Tim Coonbo Baker and Bear. Tim and Bear. Coonbo and Bear. And they were on that show for the longest time, and they told a lot of stories of Sasquatch, like when it came to like them mating with horses and braiding of the horse's hair and other horrific stories of people who were attacked by the Sasquatch, all kind of stuff. He was actually, he's a NASA scientist or researcher, whatever. He used to work over here close to where I live at right now, Redstone Arsenal military base here in Huntsville. But he lives in like the Muscle Shoals area, and Coonbo has a lot of stuff on his property still going on today. He actually brought out a shofar that was able to call them in. And I don't remember right now who was the one who told him about this. I think it's called like the Voice of God shofar, but he was able to call them in on multiple occasions. And they did this in Oklahoma. And when they did this in Oklahoma, he had like, I'm going to say about 6 to 10 other researchers out there with him.
And gal out of Pennsylvania was there that we had on last year. She talked about the shofar. I always thought that was reckless.
Well, he did that. Well, he did that. And when he did it he did it there. But then I think after that, he ended up doing it at his home too. And when he did it at his home, I think his wife was upset with him because of that. Because they were coming to the house, looking in the window and stuff like that. And it was pretty terrifying. A lot of people don't realize that a lot of eyewitnesses and researchers and people who go out there gifting them, a lot of people who deal with Bigfoot or even Dogman on that level also end up having paranormal, supernatural, or poltergeist type activity happening in their homes. Do you feel like, Ron, that there's a correlation between that paranormal activity when it comes to Bigfoot, Dogman, and other cryptids and or alien and UFO sightings? Does that coincide together?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think if aliens can manipulate the genome of a species down here, they probably could do it just about anything.
Right.
And that's including a wolf into a dogman, includes a primate, a orangutan into a Bigfoot. No telling us what has been done. We're in a hybridization program now. I think we're all hybrids, and there's so many hybrids around here. You just don't see them. If you knew what was around you right now, what was around all of us right now, if you could see it, it would frighten you probably.
You're right.
There's just so much energy.
So, Ron, give us the rundown of where you can be seen for the rest of the summer and into the fall, if you know off the top of your head. You know what kind of conferences you got going on. Are you going to the one in Oregon?
Yeah, I'm going to go to Oregon actually in June.
I'll be there. That's in July, right?
Beachfoot. June. It's the Beachfoot thing, which is small. It's invitation only, I think, but I'm going there. Anyway, end of this month, I go to New Jersey.
I saw that.
Somewhere. Then right after that, I go to California, Washington, and Oregon. And then after that, I think I go to Wisconsin. I got it on my calendar here somewhere. I got different places lined up. I'm not sure how much longer I want to do this. It's just I'm in my 80s now, and it's just I don't like traveling so much. I like what I'm doing right now with you guys. Yeah, this is a lot more.
Well, it's out more. You're here, man. You know, I mean,
last weekend I was in Kentucky. Last weekend, Townsend at the Bigfoot Festival there.
You're getting around.
Last year was busy too. This year's just busier. I've turned out a couple, but I don't want to travel that much.
I've got one last.
I don't like airports. I used to have my own airplane. I got spoiled. I could fly to these places. Yeah. They used to do that a lot with Alberry, but anyway.
Ron, I got one last question for you. The last question I have for you. When I was with Coonbo, like I had my first Dogman sighting encounter in 2013. What is that? 10 years? That's about 11 years ago. Now I was about 33 years old at the time when I saw this Dogman. And you were at the conference, so you remember. I don't know if you remember some of the pictures, but I can send them to you after the show to check out. But the Dogman that I saw that night, Sibylla Irwin ended up drawing a picture of it based on my description. But what I wanted to ask is, like, I met up with Coonbo in Limestone County, Alabama, and took him to that property. And while we were out there, we ended up experiencing some really strange things. I wanted to record when I took him to the area where I had all the Dogman. I had the initial Dogman sighting there and multiple Dogman sightings on that same property after that for like 6-7 years. They always show themselves to me. But I found out Coonbo lived here, not 45 minutes away from where my parents lived at, where all the encounters were. So he came out, we met in person, and he came out there. And I was getting ready to like try to get my camera going because I wanted to start recording as we went back there, thinking maybe I would be able to go back there and record stuff. We were going into those woods, though, like for whatever reason, I was not able to access my camera. It wouldn't allow me to record at all, period. So me and Coonbo go further back, and we're standing in an area where there's a pond or a little swampy area back there. And we're standing back there by it, and I'm talking to him, and we're talking about it. All of a sudden, me and Coonbo both kind of looked at each other like, do you feel that? We both said that at the same time. Do you feel that? It was like, I don't know. I guess to call it electricity, or like when a spider web or something like that, when the hair stands up on your arms, when the energy changes, it's almost like a vacuum. We said, do you feel that? We said it at the same time. And then Coonbo said, they don't want us back here. Immediately after Coonbo said they don't want us back here, we're in the woods. We're not near like the street where you should be able to hear cars on the road or anything like that. We're standing back there. After he said they don't want us back here, immediately out of nowhere, we hear the loudest metallic crash that you can ever imagine. When I say crash, I call it a crash because it sounded like, the best way I can describe it is, because I've heard a lot, even on, what was it? Missing 411, The Haunted, you had Tom Messick, and he went missing. And one of his friends that were out there talked about the metallic sound that was out there. But what I heard that night was so loud. It wasn't at nighttime. It was in the daytime, probably about 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So if I had to give y'all a description of how loud this metallic sound was, it sounded like, if you can think about the industrial size or industrial strength dumpsters that they have like at restaurants and apartment complexes and stuff like that, those huge metal dumpsters. And if you take that and you put it like several thousand feet up in the air and drop it down thousands of feet onto concrete. It was that loud. And
Dumpster
there was
drops.
no, yeah, but that is the best description for it. It sounded like something huge and metallic like that dropped from several thousand feet up in the air down into the concrete. And we both looked at each other, and he said, in my mind, I'm trying to rationalize it because across the other side of the pond, I could see that there's like some type of industrial building over there where there's work trucks over there. And this is on a Sunday. And I said, well, maybe like one of the workers over there, maybe they dropped something. I'm trying to make it up in my mind. Maybe they dropped something on. And Kumbo said, this is Sunday. He said, there's no workers over there. They're closed. He said, there's nothing going on there. That metallic sound, Ron, have you heard of that before in your research? And what do you think that is? If so?
Well, it's hard to say what you heard, but they can create a sound, or if a UFO was there somewhere, they could do that and you'd never see them. It might have been something they were doing or something they just wanted to get your attention to get out of there like you felt. But the energy is what you felt, and that's what told you to go, I guess. But yeah, I've heard a metallic sound in 2011 when I was up there when that thing was tromping around my tent there, and I stayed awake, obviously, because I started talking to it, and he came up next to my tent and just walked away. But I guess it walked away. I never heard it walk away, but it just nothing else. So I was laying there trying to get my tape recorder to work. You know, they don't work. I had a brand new lithium batteries in it. It wouldn't work. Otherwise, I could have recorded the chatter. I could have recorded him tromping around. I think he was looking for food, because usually they food, but I didn't take anything up there except power bars. Let me last for 3 days, but I didn't stay 3 days because my question had been answered. They're still around. But at 4 o'clock that morning, I heard this metallic sound going on right outside my tent. It really wasn't just a clicker or bang. It was I don't know how to explain it. It was very electrical, metallic like that. Mm-hmm. And as soon as the sun came up, I rolled to the little tent and took off. Because I was by myself, and you're not really supposed to be up there by yourself. Shouldn't be up there by yourself. Too many things could happen.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Anyway, that was my last really where I could say 100% they were there.
They were there?
Yeah. Something happened, like I say, in 2016 when I went up there, when that light went by us. And anyway, nothing surprises me anymore. Nothing. But they're not supposed to interfere with our karma. What we're supposed to experience and how we're supposed to react to it is all up to us. So that's why you don't see it. But they do. You know, they all have free will. Even the angels, the devils, everything has free will. So
exactly.
There definitely seems to be a set of rules, you know, like there seems to be guidelines and rules that they're not supposed to cross, you know,
right?
For whatever reason.
Star Trek's don't interfere.
Prime directive.
Yeah, prime directive. That's it. Yeah. Prime directive. Don't interfere. Right. Well, if we don't respond properly, you know, we're not going to elevate ourselves. So we have to reincarnate, redo this life, you know, this planet or another planet somewhere else. You got to go through the third dimension to graduate out of this. And you have to experience things and learn how to respond with love and learn what oneness is. That's very important. Learning who you are as a human being, what's expected of you to elevate into where we're supposed to go, which is the ninth dimension.
I'm scared the rate I'm going, it's going to be another couple hundred lives before they let me graduate, man. I'm trying though.
No, I don't think so. From what I'm hearing, you're on the track to get up there.
I hope so.
It's been a pleasure being on with you guys tonight. My website is ronmorehead.com.
Hold on, Chris. Go ahead, Ron.
And all my stuff is downloadable also if you don't want the hard copy of the books.
Must read.
Thank you.
And yes. I'll go into plan B right here because I'd happen to have them both on my desk, holding up in my bad hand. But guys, these are critical reading if you really want some insight into this. Oh, man, I got parts of both those books underlined, man. You know, myself and Kevin Keeney, who has met you before, is one of the guys from the Arizona 4 that I'm close with, and we lean into a lot of your work, man. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate having to be on with you guys tonight.
It was awesome.
Yes,
That's what I
thank you
do.
so
I
much.
got another one tomorrow. I had one yesterday and the day before. This is fun.
I saw you
Yes,
on
you
Tommy
are.
Just
Franklin's
recorded.
show.
Bigfoot
I saw
Mystery
you on
Ron.
Tom's show. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you all for showing up for the show tonight. I really appreciate each and every one of you guys. I love y'all. I'll have more great shows coming out for you guys. And with that being said, everybody, thank you for showing up. Have a good night. And Ron, can you give us that website one more time?
Ron Morehead, 1-0, just like on the screen there. Ron Morehead, except there's no space between the Ron and Morehead.com. And
All right, y'all.
Guys, check it out, man.
Legion, everything. Thank you.
All right, y'all
Thank you so
heard
much.
it.
Have a great night, all.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Brianna.
All right.